So I will be talking today about the Environmental Protection and Rehabilitation Plan, or program, if you like. Environmental Protection and Rehabilitation Program is the focus for today. I have with me a few materials from the Australian Government Department of Industry and Tourism that I have been studying, but for the purpose of this presentation, I will just be giving you the summary pertaining to the Nigerian-owned Environmental Protection and Rehabilitation Plan. But if you have your way, you could get this document. This is mine rehabilitation. This is tailings management and hazardous materials management for the mining sector. So, but this presentation today is about the mining environment and how to safeguard it during the preparation stage of the mining activity, during the operation stage, and also during the decommissioning stages of the mining activity. Generally, to safeguard the minefield and its environment, the Nigerian Minerals and Mining Act for I think 2007 stipulates that every mineral title holder, maybe it's a quarry lease, maybe it's a mining lease, depending on the title that you have. If you are operating within the Nigerian environment, it could even be an exploration license that you are trying to get, or a small scale mining lease that you're trying to obtain from the regulatory agency or the license issuing agency. You are, prior to the commencement of the mining activity, supposed to undergo environmental impact, undertake environmental impact assessment to be able to see from the planning stage all through construction, operation, and decommissioning stages of the mine. You are supposed to undertake an environmental impact assessment to show you the different impacts, and also social impact, the health impact, and most importantly, the very adverse impact that the mine activity can have on the environment. The environmental impact assessment is supposed to have this sorted out. But also, we have the Environmental Protection and Rehabilitation Program, which, like I said, is the purpose of our presentation today. So the EPRP provides, among other things, for specific rehabilitation and reclamation actions that a proponent is supposed to undertake, including the cost estimates for each rehabilitation or reclamation action, a reasonable estimate, and also the total cost of rehabilitation, the timetable for the orderly and efficient rehabilitation exercise for the mineral title area. This is to ensure a safe and environmentally sound condition suitable for future economic development. And the EPRP will also stipulate the amount to be contributed into what we call the Environmental Protection and Rehabilitation Fund. That is the EPRF, for the purpose of guaranteeing environmental obligations of mineral title holders. So the EPRF, it's a contribution that the mineral title holder makes, either annually or biannually, or in any way that it has agreed to make these payments to the government. So the fund is used for rehabilitation in case of situations whereby the mine could be abandoned by the mine sites. We have that all around African countries, where a mine is abandoned by the mining company, and perhaps they are not even Africans, and they have gone back to their countries. And we have this enormous effect that is abandonment of the mine pits or the leachates, or the entire environment of the mine is the condition. The abandonment is a big issue and shouldn't be, and that is what the EPRP intends to address. So there is a program or a plan of action that needs to be taken during the operation and during the decommissioning phase. And another aspect of the EPRP is the cost component that the proponent is supposed to have in mind and also contribute in order for the environment to be kept safe during and after the mining activity. So there are many impacts of mining activities on the environment. We have the impacts on land. The EPRP looks at all of this. And on land, you have the morphological and landscape alteration or damages to the landscape, which we intend that you will reclaim or rehabilitate after the life cycle of the, at the end of the life cycle of the mine. We have effects on the soil quality, even the water resources. We may have cases where the groundwater rehabilitation may have to take place due to a mine activity. We also have the acid mine drainage and contaminant leaching. This too is a concern for the environment. So the EPRP will seek to the fact that these issues are resolved. Could it also be erosion of soils and mine waste into surface water? That would mean a lot of problem for the neighboring surface water, if at all. I heard of a particular a project that was going on, and the community is a very rural community, would think that the water coming from upstream is actually due to some spiritual reasons why the water gets bad at some certain time and then gets better at some certain days of the week or of the month, not knowing actually that it is a mine site that is operating upstream of the river that releases mine waste into the river, and then this flows down to the communities, and then they use it maybe for bathing, even for cooking. You can imagine for yourself what damage that will be. So the rehabilitation and the protection plan in form of the EPRP seeks to address this. So we also have effects on wildlife and biodiversity. Ordinarily, if the biodiversity is going to be tampered with due to a mine activity, there's supposed to be a plan for restoration. If it cannot be mitigated, then it's supposed to be a restoration plan for the biodiversity, and that will relate to habitat loss and habitat fragmentation. All this ought to be taken into consideration by the environmental impact assessment and by extension, the EPRP that we are talking about. There's also effects on air quality because you have the mobile sources and the stationary sources, you have fugitive emissions, you also have noise and vibration. These things left to linger for a very long time could constitute serious environmental damage, and subsequently it could even lead to reactions from the communities whose land is being degraded, or the impacts could be really, really enormous and huge in the long run. So in essence, what we are going to be looking at in the EPRP, there is actually a guideline also for the EPRP, what it needs to contain, and the format which the report is supposed to be presented, so that it's not another bulky document as the EIA used to be. So moving away from the environmental aspects, we have socioeconomic issues that most mines constitute. It could be human displacement and resettlement, influx of people to mining areas, loss of access to clean water due to the groundwater contamination. If there is this social issue that the people can no longer use the groundwater sources for drinking, it's really, really an environmental issue that should not be taken lightly or thrown away as nothing at all. We have the CO2 emissions also, either by machines or by processing of ore into metals. We have climate change considerations that should be also put in place for the mine itself. So the template for an EPRP can be made available. I will try to put a link under this video so that you can have access to the templates for a typical EPRP, what the content is supposed to contain, what the content is supposed to contain, is supposed to be, pardon, and also what steps and when it should be taken and by who. Generally, the communities the commitments in environmental protection and rehabilitation program must be specific. It must be auditable, because you cannot claim to do a thing after the life cycle of the mine. You cannot claim to rehabilitate after the mine cycle of a mine, and we do not have a template for auditing, like a key performance indicator for auditing your actions or your inactions. So it has to have measurable outcomes in order for a clear auditing exercise to be effective. And also timeframes for taking certain actions have to be included in the rehabilitation plan. And it should be written clearly and avoid complex statements that perhaps the implementing officers or the engineers or the support staff in the field may find cumbersome, or they may not be able to understand it. It's a plan, and so a plan must put into consideration the users. So it shouldn't be too much of technical terms, but rather broken down in a way that the users can interpret and avoid use of ambiguity, generally ambiguous terminologies, so that it shouldn't be where possible. No, be specific in the EPRP, because human nature, when you say, okay, where possible, you can, it means I have a room to say that it's not possible. So that shouldn't be part of it. And they should ensure commitments of the statement. The regulatory agency should ensure that there is commitment of the management of the mining company to ensure the EPRP is implemented. In fact, I think that the EPRP should have a statement of commitment added either as an appendix or as a forward, signed by the MD, to ensure that the rehabilitation plan is clearly understood and they are committed to ensuring that they implement the plan that it is. It is absolutely unfair to have a successful mine operation in a particular location, specifically in Africa. It is unfair for a developing country's company. What you won't do in your country is completely unfair to come into Africa and degrade the system and then abandon the mines and cut away with the resources for many gains, and then leave the communities with pits, with leachates, uncontrolled leachates, and having dangerous chemicals. It could be lead, it could be cyanide in a very high volume, leaching into natural sources of water and causing harm for the people. So generally, I would highlight for you the content of the EPRP itself. You have a preamble. Like I said, if I have a way of suggesting to our clients at Rich Flood, or to anyone interested in listening to me, a commitment page needs to be added to the template of the EPRP to ensure that the people, to ensure that the people stick to what they have documented in that report, to be able to implement it without any hassle at all. Okay, just a second, please. All right. Okay, so typically, please add a commitment page to your EPRP in the preliminary pages so that your staff can see that the MD or the authorizing person is serious about rehabilitation and that they have to do their mining operation in a systematic manner that does not make the cost of rehabilitation go more than what is budgeted for. And they would see that, yes, our management is committed to rehabilitating or to reclaiming the land, even when we are done with the exploration or the exploitation of the mineral. So in your preamble, you have an executive summary that the MD can read and understand and give recommendations on what actions is to be taken and when. And then you have your first chapter should have a summary of the impact that you have generated. I mean, the impact that was predicted during your EIA exercise. You could have a table showing the perceived impact at every stage of the project and the severity of the impact at every stage of the project and what to do to mitigate the impact, that way. And then who is supposed to handle this mitigation measures, and who is supposed to monitor that these mitigation measures or the avoidance measures are being implemented. And then the last column for this will now be the time when this action is supposed to be taken. So you have the purpose of the EPRP also stated there for your staff or for the mine operators to understand what is the purpose of this document. The document, unfortunately, I don't have a copy, but the document is not a bulky document. It can be reviewed by anyone, within a time frame of an hour. You can go through the document and understand the content and understand what actions needs to be done part time. So it will also be important for you to summarize the extant law, depending on your location. If you are in Africa, if you're in Nigeria, you're in Ghana, you're in Rwanda, you need to get the extant laws for the location, the local laws for the location, the environmental laws or the mining laws for the location. So in the case of Nigeria, you have the Environmental Impact Assessment Act and you have the Minerals and Mining Act. You also have the Minerals and Mining Regulation and other company, you can cite in the EPRP other company policies as it relates to environmental policies, safety policies, and company health policies, just to drive the internal environmental management systems. Companies have policies. I think it's good for you to review the policies and try to superimpose it on the laws of the land that is relating to mine rehabilitation or reclamation, and then merge together for a proper understanding and a proper standing. So the process for mining rehabilitation and environmental management should also be stated in the document. In some countries, this document have to go through some approval processes before it can now be adopted as a working document. Yes, you have to find out in the country where you are operating what is the approval process. Who needs to review this document before we adopt it as a working document within the organization? And after the approval, where is the approval or the certificate for the EPRP supposed to be sent to, so that management will understand that, okay, this has been done, and all staff will understand the commitment of the company to ensuring that this is executed. So in chapter 2 of the EPRP, it's important to state each stage of the mine activity and its potential impact, each stage of the mine operation, the proposed activity for the mine, and the environmental aspects of mining. What are the environmental aspects of each stage of the mine? Don't forget, in my past trainings, I spoke about environmental aspects. I spoke about environmental impact. You can go to the YouTube channel of Rich Flood Limited and find this video about environmental aspects and environmental impacts. So for the sake of the EPRP, it has to be documented in a systematic way. These are the environmental aspects and these are the environmental impacts of each activity, of the mine operation itself. And then you move forward to chapter 3, where you describe description of the mine site. Where is the location of this mine? What is the baseline information of that was gathered, the environmental baseline information that was gathered earlier? What is the climatic condition, the ambient air quality and noise? It has to be recorded. You may have to visit the site to have this measurements done, or if the environmental impact assessment is just newly done, you could borrow some secondary data from the EIA and used to fill in these chapters. So what is the geology? What is the hydrogeology? What are the soil condition? What's the surface water condition? So you may have to take some samples to the laboratory. You may have to test for physical-chemical properties of the surface water, bacteriological properties of the surface water, and also heavy metals and metals for the surface water. This needs to be documented. The flora and the fauna, the baseline information about the flora and the fauna also can be found in the EIA document or can be undertaken separately so that it's documented and we use that for reference in the future. Without data, we cannot reference anything and we cannot know the extent by which a rehabilitation is to be done or by which the land has been degraded. So baseline information is critical to the rehabilitation plan. Also, the land use and land cover information needs to be documented in the EPRP. Then you move to chapter 4, which is the resettlement plan. Is there a need for resettlement plan? Remember in my introduction, I took you through the socioeconomic aspects of the EPRP. Is there a need for a resettlement plan? Is there a guiding principle for the resettlement plan? Which law are you using? Is it the Land Use Act or there is a resettlement act, depending on your country and the laws available? What law are you using to do this assessment for the land use and land cover? And then what are the laws of compensation for your country? If this is a parcel of land and you are taking a portion of my land, what does the law say about the compensation? What is the amounts you use for the compensation? A summary of these laws can be listed on the chapter 4 of the EPRP. You also have the World Bank Group Resettlement Guidelines. This is available. You can have a summary for the World Bank Group Resettlement Guidelines in the EPRP documented as well. You have the public consultations and disclosures. Was this done? If this was done, you need to also put some evidences that this was done and have some summary discussions about how it was done. Okay. So we go down, you also need to have the valuation process relevant to the communities. What was the valuation process that was adopted for that particular community? Were there grievances? How were the grievances addressed? Because from experience during resettlement or during compensations, there are always grievances. Oh no, this land belongs to my brother and it's been taken. Or no, this is a family land, the compensation shouldn't go to this person. Or no, I do not even want the mining company to take my land. There are approaches to addressing this grievances in a systematic way. So what mechanism was put in place for that during the mining activities, or you intend to put in place just in case it's a proposed mine? And then what are the compensation and entitlements matrix that you're using? What is the compensation eligibility, the compensation calculation? On what basis are you doing the compensation calculation? And accountability for resettlement implementation needs to be clearly stated in the EPRP. So you move to chapter 5, where you have the program itself, that is environmental protection and rehabilitation program. In some instances, it's called a plan. Yeah, or in some instances, it's just mine rehabilitation. So depending on your country and what works there, but on the chapter 5, you have to state clearly what is the specific environmental protection measure that the mine sites or the mine operators or the mine company or the proponent, it's deciding to adopt. What are the specific environmental protection measures? What is the construction or management of assets roads? And how are you going to set up the site camp establishment, and also soil management and erosion control? What do you intend to do? How do you intend to control all of this? So tailing pond and water management, you have to state clearly how this will be managed. Remember, they were all part of the impacts I mentioned earlier. And then the vegetation plan. How do you intend to vegetate the area? As the trees were being cut down for specific construction activity, what is the vegetation plan? And to revegetate the environment, what trees are you going to plant within the environment? What species of trees are you going to plant, and why? So this can be stated in the environment. So air quality and noise level management, how do you intend to curtail the emissions that would come from the mine activities? What is the plan to reduce these emissions? And when it cannot be reduced, what is the plan to make sure that even when it is the emissions, the gases are being emitted, what is the plan to make sure that it does not constitute a serious for the communities, most especially? What is the equipment maintenance? What is the materials handling, the use and the storage? In some country, we have the what they call the fuel storage plan. We have what they call the fuel storage plan in some countries. So it depends on the country again, but these plans are put in place so that the safety of the mine is guaranteed. This is guaranteed. The safety of the communities is guaranteed. So that, for instance, if you're using fuel, it is properly stored, the use and the storage, so that perhaps in some laws, you have to build a bond wall around the fuel storage equipment, so that if there are leakages, for instance, there will be no spills that could cause a fire. And talking about fire, you have to put together also a fire prevention mechanism for the mine, to be able to control such disaster. But when you have a bond wall for your fuel, it curtails the extent to which the leakages can go around within your facility, safety of your investment, and also safety of the communities. Okay, what is the environmental rehabilitation measures that you have? This will be listed and well articulated in the report. What is the closure outcomes? What is the completion criteria and post-closure monitoring? When a mine is closed, we do not just abandon the mine. There has to be a monitoring system there has to be a monitoring system to make sure that the post-closure activities are done and that the mine is not abandoned for more hazard and all that. You need to also have the estimate of closure cost. What is your closure cost in terms of currency? How much financial estimation of your closure cost? And then what is the schedule for orderly and efficient rehabilitation of the mine? What is the schedule of your of the efficient rehabilitation of the mine, and how much are you contributing to the EPRF? Remember, I said what EPRF was, Environmental Protection and Rehabilitation Fund. How much are you contributing to the EPRF? That is in the custodian in the custody of the government, maybe. Then chapter 6, which is not the last chapter, but second to the last, environmental management system, EMS. You have the planning process, the resource and implementation, operational control, progress measurement. If a mine is already having an EMS system in operation, then this chapter is just to summarize what is already happening regarding the environmental management system and how the performance results will be measured, and what training is required for old employees, for new employees, for suppliers, and for stakeholders that are critical to the implementation of the EPRP, what training is being put together, and then what is the monitoring structure for the EMS. Then in conclusion is chapter 7. Chapter 7, you are going to be attaching your mineral title. This is appendixes where you have to, if you have an environmental impact assessment already done, then the certificate is attached at the appendix so that whoever picks up the document understands the commitment and understands what has been done so far with regarding to ensuring a safe and sound environment. You have an approved mine design attached to the EPRP, the minimum work program showing the number of staff you intend to recruit during the operation of the mine, and even during the construction and the decommissioning. How many staff do you intend to recruit, and what are their roles, and what is the equipment input into the project? The estimated investment cost will be included in your minimum work program. We call it MWP. It will be included in your minimum work program, and it will be useful for us, for whoever is reviewing the document, to understand that, okay, this is the extent of work that needs to be done, and this is how it should be done in a certain, in a systematic way, and this is how what approvals have been gotten even before the EPRP is undertaken. So this is quite this is very important that these are attached. And if the mine has a legitimate mineral title issued by the government agency, for instance, so the mineral title has to also be an appendix to the EPRP. I hope this short presentation has added value to your operation as a mining company. And if you have any questions, please send me an email, comfort@richflood.com, comfort@richflood.com. And if you have difficulty for your staff understanding the EPRP, please get in touch with us. We can organize a training, a comprehensive training to go through your own document, precise, specific for your mine site. We can go through it and do some training for your employees to be able to follow it and not to cause more liabilities for the company, because the lack of implementation of the EPRP is going to be a liability for the mine in the long run. And for any assistance you need, maybe you need an EPRP to be developed for your mine site, you can send an email to projects@richflood.com, projects with S @richflood.com. Thank you very much and have a very, very nice day.